This program is funded by the European Union.
Hi, I'm Andy Spike, and my personal style is simple, timeless, and classy. Tijania Fashion gives me my personal style. They say you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. And that's why Tijania Fashion is enough for me. Visit Tijania Fashion today. For you deserve to be happy in the world of fashion.
To our audience worldwide, good evening and welcome to GCCI Business Matters. I am Malik M. Jallo. Repeatedly in a lot of sessions or more sessions or in many of our discussions here, we cannot just cease to talk about certain topics because of their importance. That is to their importance or their contribution to the economy. Taxation, we will always talk about that. Inflation, we will always talk about it. And but another important one is agriculture. The new feeling, the new environment, the new kind of philosophy the Gambia is trying to develop from the public sector or as a sense of policy direction is to encourage local production. Everybody is aware of that, or it's becoming at the forefront because we have seen how continuous imports is leading to a lot of challenges in multifaceted ways and multidimensional. And the most explicit one is foreign exchange or surge of forex, which is having very negative impact on the dalasi, that is accelerating the depreciation of the dalasi and impacting the lives of average Gambians. So today we will talk about agriculture, but in a different perspective. We will talk about agriculture in the form of the resilience of organization for transformation of smallholder agriculture, that is the Roots project. And with me here today in the studio is Mr. Mamour Aliou Jagne, that is the project director of Roots. We will dive into the conversation to make use of the time. As usual, time is always short here on this platform. Mr. Jagne, welcome to GCCI Business Matters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jallo. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. I like the way you speak. It's really interesting to hear. So tell us before we get into the subject of discussion, which is the importance of the Roots, its contribution to the private sector, the Roots project. Tell us a little bit of Mr. Jagne, because this is the first time the audience of GCCI will be meeting Mr. Jagne. Tell us a little bit.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Briefly, Mamour Aliou Jagne is my name. Career-wise, I'm a trained agricultural economist. My career spans across diplomacy and development. So I've worked for the government, I've worked for international organizations, I've managed projects, I've had diplomatic representation on behalf of the country. So I've had a varied career over more than 20 years, probably close to 30 years now. So I returned to the country in 2018, and since then I've been here trying to make my own little contribution to this country's development. So that is Mamour Aliou Jagne in short, career-wise.
That's amazing. I would say that I am proud that we have an agricultural economist here. So the host is an economist, but more of international economists and finance and all that.
Excellent.
But it's very good that we have an agricultural economist because It's very rare to come across. So tell us, since you came back, your experience, especially in the area that you are focusing, which is helping the developmental aspect of agriculture. Before we get into deeper the specifics, I want to know, what is your experience? What have you seen in the overall agricultural sector?
Well, thank you very much. I will give you an interesting anecdote. Last time I left the country was in 2015. My last assignment was to develop a national agriculture sector strategy funded by FAO. This year, the ministry is trying to do a new sector strategy. But the findings and recommendations of 2015, they remain relevant, unfortunately. So to me, that means the sector hasn't changed in nearly 10 years. But there are other things that actually have happened which are positive. I think the first thing is the deliberate concentration towards food self-sufficiency and rice self-sufficiency. I think that is new. It's the president's pronouncement, it is the minister's mandate, but I don't recall that we've had such a deliberate effort to achieve rice self-sufficiency. The other thing that has changed is a larger footprint when it comes to the private sector in agriculture. Many individuals within and outside the country are investing in agriculture in their own ways. So through that, I think they're helping to move the sector forward through greater capacity, through new ideas, new opportunities, etc. But that would be my synopsis as far as the agri sector is concerned.
I like where you started, you know, and that is, I find it very astonishing, or a lot of people find it very astonishing, and sometimes shocking a little bit. Because if you look at attention given to agriculture in terms of project opportunities and allocation of resources, I'm sorry to say, but it's just like NAWEC, you know. Since we have been going to school, you know, kindergarten, we have just had a lot of projects coming to the agricultural sector, you know, and then, but still, you still talk about, you know, most of the food that we consume is coming from outside. Like I said, I will go to the topic right away after this, but I want you to tell me, what do you think from your experience and the fact that you mentioned that the recommendations in 2015 still remains relevant in 2024 or 2023 when the strategy has been developed. That is a little bit shocking. Don't you find that?
Okay, I have a diplomatic background, so I wouldn't say shocking. I would say amazing.
I will accept it, no problem.
No, I agree with you entirely. You know, there are areas in this country where we just go round and round trying to solve the same problems over and over again. And I think that is why those findings in 2015 remain relevant. But like I mentioned, now we have a deliberate effort. Okay, let us solve the rice issue and let us move to another issue. And I think that is a good step forward. For us at Roots, we are focused on rice and vegetables. So we are tackling those things in parallel. You may, I don't know whether, Malik, you go to the market or not, but what is common this year is a glut in onion production this year, coupled with the imports. And that is a result of the efforts of the ministry, the efforts of Roots, the efforts of the government to increase onion production in this country and minimize the imports. We succeeded in increasing the production, but the linkage with the markets is where we need to do a bit more work.
It's good that you have got us into the topic, because as economists sometimes we tend to talk too much and then we deviate from what we need to say actually. But I like the fact that you've moved the conversation to the road. So let's get into it deeper. Tell us about the process of how the private sector comes in. You made mention that you realize that the private sector now has a heavier footprint in the agricultural sector compared to 15 years ago or so. So the market issue that you have mentioned, why is it difficult? Are we talking about linkage to the domestic market, or are we talking about linkage to the international market? I'm assuming it's domestic because we have not yet started exporting. But the rice also, even though you've mentioned we have there's a deliberate policy, which is very right, because sometimes development is a deliberate strategy. So we still having a huge chunk of rice being imported. So how does this go about? How do you get to be in touch with private sector? How do they benefit from the Roots project and all that stuff?
Okay, if it is to address the question as to how the private sector can benefit from the Roots project, I would say the opportunities are almost endless. I listed on a piece of paper and I ran out of space as to the possible opportunities. If you allow me, I'll just go through it.
You can go through.
Yeah. So firstly, our budget, that is Roots, is divided into what we call civil works, consultancy services, including training, grants and subsidies, goods and equipment, including vehicles. So if you total that, it's nearly $70 million. Now, out of that, I dare say, for every category, there are opportunities for the private sector. Where are we going to buy the goods from? From the private sector. Who is going to do the civil works? It is the contractors, the engineers. Who is going to finance the matching grant contributions of our beneficiaries? Opportunities for finance service providers. Who is going to train our people? Who will conduct these studies? These are all opportunities for the private sector. The advertisements, the operation and maintenance, the IT services. It's almost endless. If I were to go through it individually, but I think you get the drift. The office supplies, everything. I dare say every segment of the private sector has an opportunity in the Roots project. Yeah.
So I'm still going to take I know you've mentioned the how we call it. Do you call it subsidiary beneficiaries? Because one thing complementary, you know, sort of
matching grant.
Yeah, because you need one thing, then you need another thing. But I'm much more interested in the production and also in the equipment, because a lot of agricultural projects have been in this country, but we still have farmers, whether small scale, large scale, commercial or subsistence, still use traditional tools. Why is it still prevalent? And is there any of the categories under the Roots projects that is linked to this, or there is none?
Yeah, in fact, there are what we call matching grants that seek to address this issue of the drudgery and the issue of modernizing agriculture, and particularly to attract the youth back to agriculture. So we have what we call the matching grant facility for youth. Now, a month ago, we awarded 86 individuals across the country with a ceiling. A ceiling means what they can get at most out of the individual matching grant. So the ceiling is $7,500 per youth. And you can find them in the remotest of areas in this country, creating employment not only for themselves, but also for those around them, and impacting on the community around them. What do? They provide agricultural services generally. This can be as simple as a tricycle that just takes the agricultural produce from the garden to the market. It can be an input dealer that makes sure that the farmers get good quality seed on time, or where they need pesticide or herbicide, it is available. It can be food processing, so that farmers will have a market. So when they harvest their tomatoes, there is somebody who makes tomato juice or ketchup or puree that they can sell to. So we train these youths around the country, we equip them, and then we coach them as well for a period, and then we try to link. That's just the private sector. If you go further up, there's another matching grant aimed at the SMEs, but also farmer organizations. There, the grant ceiling is up to $200,000, and it is meant to provide modern equipment like combine harvesters, an onion curing facility, or a tomato processing facility, that sort of thing. So this is what we have in terms of trying to modernize the equipment that are used there, but doing that also working through the private sector. Who supplies the equipment? It is the private sector. Who provides the training for them? It is the private sector. So that is what we are trying to do. As to why we are where we are in terms of the equipment, I can posit two possible reasons. One is sustainability, and I think this is really what as a country we have to work on, but particularly the agri sector. Almost every project that has been here since independence, I dare say, has registered significant gains. But when the project finishes, we go back to square one, and that is what you opened with when you said we keep solving the same problem. So sustainability is critical. So at the time of each agricultural project, they bring the most modern, appropriate equipment for this country. But what I think we also need to work on is ensuring we have a good network of maintenance capability, you know, the workshops, the equipment, the spare parts, the know-how. And I can say for Roots, we are also trying to build on that, yeah.
That is actually a very important point. I think some little bit of attitude there is very important, because it's good that you mentioned it very clearly, because most of the times, and I think when we had the conversation with Malado here, that is the project officer at the Gambia Chamber of Commerce, that was one of the questions that we settled towards her, that most of the times these agricultural projects, you know, they have a lifetime of 5 to 10 years, and the project phases out. But during that time, because there's monitoring, there's evaluation, there's all those things, you see that, everything is intact. But once the project phases out, like you mentioned, the equipment is not being maintained, the strategies or the methodologies that were thought are not being sustained and continuously implemented. And you find that the impact then dies out as soon as. So you participated in developing the strategy in 2015, like you mentioned. How do we overcome that? Because I believe if we don't, I mean, it's still going to be like a continuous cycle that we are trapped in. Absolutely. And the other thing is sometimes also the publicity of these opportunities and how people can get access to them is not well also communicated. And also youth, that is a very important point, trying to bring back the youth to agriculture. There are a lot of civil, training and organization going. But I think that has not been, given the attention that it requires or it needs, because most of the youths that live here, when they go abroad, the first thing that they do in Italy is in the farms. And some of the richest people in these European countries, or even in America, are the farmers. So the messaging, what work are you guys doing into that, and how, from your experience, do you think we exit this trap cycle of issues with regard to projects phasing out?
Yes, I think we can, because other countries have done it. So why can't we do it? To me, it is that straightforward. But so that means we have to look at what is being done elsewhere successfully that we are not doing. I will take the case of the Roots project. That is what I'm responsible for.
Right.
We have 3 years to go to the end of the project. But we have already prepared our exit strategy, our sustainability strategy. That means now that everything we do for the next 3 years, we will make sure there are sustainable aspects put into our activities. So we have 3 years to consolidate and then step out, by which time, the beneficiaries will be able to continue on their own. An example, we provide input support to farmers to help in this rice production. So as a starting point, we know their yields are very low and they don't have a lot of cash. So we give them an 80% subsidy and they pay 20% when they harvest. If they can pay earlier, fine. So, but with that input support, their yields go up. And so they should have more production and more cash. As they do, they should then be able to take on more of these responsibilities for input. So in the second year, we give them 50% and they come up with 50%. In the third year, we give them 40%. They come up with 60%. So it's a 3-year program. So the 80% subsidy that we're giving in the first year allows them not only to access inputs, but also to make savings, because they would have spent so much on inputs if they can afford it. But now they're not spending, they're able to make savings. We do that through farmer organizations and not necessarily individuals. And we capacitize those farmer organizations to continue the work when we leave. We train them, we give them capital indirectly, we organize them, we look at their governance aspects and so on, so that the aim is now they will continue their activities when Roots phases out, as I said. So the inculcation of a counterpart contribution by the beneficiaries enhances ownership. If we give it to them free, well, they will wait for the next free ride. But if they have invested themselves into all these services, this equipment, then tendency is they are going to take it more. So that is the first thing, the ownership. The second is actually training them. And the third is having an exit strategy early on to ensure sustainability. That is on the part of Roots. So if we took that as the approach, maybe we can make greater strides as far as sustainability is concerned in the country. From day one, as you come in, you are thinking of how to exit in a sustainable manner. So that is what Roots is trying to do. As for the publicity, the mechanism, what I can say is that our interface for Roots with the private sector is the Chamber of Commerce. So what they do working with us is organizing forums in which they invite certain segments of the private sector. For example, one day the topic is opportunities for finance service providers, banks and so on in the Roots project, opportunities for equipment providers and other things like that. However, I concede that we can reach a greater audience better, but also more important than just reaching, having follow-up activities to ensure something comes out of this sensitization. So we work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and we have had these conversations on how to improve, and we will do better, inshallah. Yeah.
That's a great deliberation there. As we always say, this platform is always having short of time, and the discussions we have here are always wonderful. So I will give Mr. Jai a minute to address the audience, something that you want to say that I did not ask, or I am not going to ask as time is running out.
No, I think this is a great program that I think needs to be regularized, and we on the part of Roots are willing to work with GCCI to extend it, because it has given us, for instance, the opportunity to elaborate on what Roots can do with the private sector. But I have to say also that there are many private sector operators who are already taking advantage of these opportunities. Where I think we need greater input is the finance service providers. So, example, some of our beneficiaries have challenges meeting their counterpart contributions. These could be areas that, the banks, the non-bank finance institutions can pick up. Some get contracts, but they need the funding to deliver. Sometimes those things get delayed. Other than that, I think we're doing fairly well with the private sector. Let me also thank IFAD that is funding the Roots organization. Let me thank the Ministry of Agriculture, which Roots is part of, and the tremendous support we get from the ministry, from the minister going down. And of course, what people don't know is the Roots project is the baby of President Barrow. So we want to thank him also for that. Yeah, thank you.
That's great, and we really appreciate you being here. And it's also good that Roots have the, or you're thinking of participating with GCCI Business Matters, so that we can do more and a lot more things. We can have more people, because it's really a platform that a lot of things that are not said anywhere else are said here, and we will appreciate your participation into it. Until we come your way next week, I am Malik M. Jallo. This is GCCI Business Matters, and that is what we had for you. Until I come your way next week, inshallah.
Hi, I'm Andy Spike, and my personal style is simple, timeless, and classy. Tijania fashion gives me my personal style. They say you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. And that's why Tijania fashion is enough for me. Visit Tijania Fashion today. For you deserve to be happy in the world of fashion.
This program was funded by the European Union.